What's good? I am Yish. You're watching New Leaves on Life. No big intros today or outros. It's been a minute since I posted, of course. That's usually what I start off with. These videos seem to be few and far between. So, I haven't looked at my last video, so I'm just going to recap. And I'll do a full recap here. So, we talk about the first IFS session. I presumably released an exile that has been free ever since. That allowed me to be a little closer physically to people. And that was a couple of years ago. Then earlier this year, well, in between this year and, that first IFS session, I've discovered a space, and I think that space, from my understanding, is the state of being vulnerable. It's where that's exactly what it is. And I'm kind of just hit me because that's where I'm trying to get back to. It's the place where, let me say it like this. Well, let me define it. It's the place where you don't attach to anything, right? You don't attach to anything good or bad. And you kind of just let things be the way they are without judgment. And when you stop your, in my case, incessant thinking or overthinking, by operating in that space of vulnerability, that means that you don't have a lot of judgment, and you don't have a lot of complaint. You don't have a lot of overthinking and just thinking in general about things that you may see, but the thinking generally is things that don't exist, right? Stuff like how I could have did it better, or I would have done this, or let me prepare for this because this may happen. A lot of that, right? And it goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, and it clouds the clarity in thought and hampers you from just relaxing, man, in the present moment. So that's my defining of it. But when I found it, I was elated. Let me say it like that. I was elated when I found it, and it was like finding gold. Emotionally, I still wasn't there. And that's something I'm still struggling with, and I'll get to that. Emotionally, it wasn't like I was excited, but I was definitely elated to have found such a thing, to have discovered such a thing, because it allowed me to breathe. It allowed me to relax in my person, when before, again, it was just incessant thinking. The problem was because of the great elation that I had, and if I put it on a scale, right, with good being up here, bad being down here, and neutral being in the middle, when I found it, I was up here, and I wanted to do everything I could to hold on to this feeling that I was in, so much so that it reminds me of how I was before I got to this numb state. And that was, I was avoiding people and avoiding pain, so much so that I was able to live a life um, would that I would consider to be good, right? I was in my music. I had my coping mechanisms. I wasn't bothering nobody. Nobody was bothering me, and I was good where I was at until one day, boom, as one lady said, the universe um, put an end to that, and it was through conflict, and somehow from that long span, we're talking about living that life from my childhood to my 30s. So you can imagine this avoidant nature that I had being around people. It wasn't complete. It wasn't like I was just totally falling apart around people. It was the expectation that something is going to bring the pain that I dealt with during my childhood years. And so the avoidant part was very skeptical about, people's intentions, and I didn't associate myself with a lot of people. I had friends, right? I probably can count on both hands how many friends I've had over the years. But let me get back to my point. I lived at least 30 years in that space. Let's say 25, right? Probably less than that, more like 20 years in that space. But I had never resolved any of the issues, right? I still was an individual who wasn't taking care of himself, wasn't properly cleaning myself. I wasn't keeping my surroundings clean. So I still had not learned the lessons that I was supposed to have learned from my childhood. And I did not learn the lesson that people are not, untrustworthy, right? I didn't learn any of those things. So when an opportunity for life to come around to knock me back and show me, basically tear the mask off, tear down the false security that I had, it was a blow to my system, right? It was a blow to my system. So that's why I say it kind of speaks in that same vein where I call myself living this high life, and I was trying to hold on to it, and that's that. So that's the vulnerability that I discovered afterwards, which is the state that most of us are in. No, let me rephrase that. That is the state that we are in as children before life gives you lemons, right? You're in a vulnerable state. As a child, you don't think about good things or bad things. You're living in the moment and enjoying the molding that you have before you of life, right? You're not even aware that you're in a life, that you have a molding of what's before you. You're just there. And so I discovered that, got knocked back from that, and every time I got into that space, I kept getting knocked back. So it became frustrating and exhausting to get into that space and then to get knocked back. So it was more of the defending of my my emotional, I guess you can say, or spiritual resources, which is more the same of what happened as a kid, just defending myself. And so I came to a point after some time where I did some IFS on myself, because I still haven't found a therapist yet, especially with this COVID thing. This just jumped in the way. But anyway, I did some self-therapy, right? Where I had a conversation with myself. I actually recorded this, and I spoke to the part of my mind that tells the story, that ruminates, basically, that incessant thinking that goes on 24/7. And I had a conversation as a parent, as the grown me speaking to the young me about how we need to turn that story down. It's okay to think. You can't really stop thinking. But when I did that, I had a shift. My whole body, I was literally sitting in the chair. And as I was having this conversation and I laid out the rules to myself of how this is going to work, there was a shift in my body. And it was the weirdest thing, because after that, the space of vulnerability was creeping back in. And this time, instead of me trying to grab onto this high portion of it, I tried to stay in the middle. I tried not to expect, everything to be goody-goody. But I tried not to expect everything to be terrible either. So I tried to stay in the middle. And as much work as I have put in so far, none of this has lifted what I'm finding to be called the heart wall in one modality. I think it's the emotion code or something like that. But anyway, something I just started looking into. But my guard, right? We talked about that. The guards are just there. And I decided finally, or I'm not decided, I finally had an opportunity to speak to myself the other day in regards to that part of me that is guarding the heart. And I have to get more into that, because what essentially happened was there was a moment where I almost cried. And that I want to happen. I want it to come all the way out. It was almost as if I turned the faucet on and turned it right off. It was like it juked out, it dripped out for a hot second, but there was no ability for me to push it all the way open. And so it's been leading me to trailheads, or rather the trailheads have been leading me to the stories behind why. And at the end of the day, I really do need to know why. Right? And I need to know more than just, I went through some crap as a kid, and all of that. But I need to know what was it? What things did I go through? Because it was more than just a teasing for being dirty and smelly in the classroom. It was more to it than that. There was a lot more stories, right? But there may be an overarching story as well. Now, I really think about the fact that I spent 20 years of my life in a good space, so I thought. Not realizing that I spent 20 years of my life in a false good space. Because there was never anybody to change the story. There was never anybody who told me that I'm in a bad story. You got your information wrong. How you deal with this is not the way that you're dealing with it. So, but anyway, I just wanted to post, because that is my current mission right now. I kind of been sleeping in a separate room at home, because my wife contributes by way of conflict to what you can consider a re-traumatizing. And I'm tired of being re-traumatized. And I'm also exhausted of her going through this crazy phenomenon. It's just, so I just decided, all right, well, first of all, it actually started because I got sick. I got bronchitis, so I decided to just sleep in the basement. I had to get all of that stuff out of me. And I'm trying to stop this shit here, excuse my French, this smoking. So I've been smoking, been cutting my cigar in half a day, seeing how far, by being aware, I get with the smoking. It's generally been no more than this much here. And just trying to cut this out slowly. I've tried several times now this year to just stop smoking, and I generally, the first time I stopped, which was for 5 years, I just stopped. I grabbed me a pack of gum and just stopped. But this constant re-traumatizing is where, this is one of the coping mechanisms, is where this just keeps coming in and keeps coming in and keeps coming in, and it keeps setting me up to a point where I'm saying, F it, just smoke, right? Anyway, I'm just giving y'all the details of what's going on. So right now I'm trying to discover how to unlock this door. And I seen it the other day, like even a few days after having that conversation with that part of me, I started seeing some of the older memories, but I could feel what I haven't felt, and I don't mean emotionally. It's like the taste of reality is something that I'm lacking in this numb state. It's not just emotions, but it's the taste of reality. It's really the taste. They call it derealization, depersonalization. Those two things. It's like the taste of the waking world is just not there. So, but anyway, that's my update, man. I'm gonna get off here. It's 16 minutes now, and I'm on the clock, so I gotta get back to work and take a look at all of this stuff in here. Get on the job. Be safe. Be watching New Leafs on Life.